Well, Germany's Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development says it wants to help African countries make their economies more climate friendly. Other priorities listed in the ministry's newly unveiled Africa strategy include improving social and health services and making the agriculture sector less dependent on foreign-sourced seed, fertilizer, and pesticides. And as populations grow, the ministry says quick action is needed to stave off mass migration events, new conflicts, pandemics, and higher global carbon emissions. Well, Germany's Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development, Svenja Schulze, gave DW an exclusive interview. She stressed that she wants to build mutually beneficial partnerships with African countries.
We don't want these countries to be permanently dependent on us. We don't want to create some kind of neo-colonialism, but rather a partnership relationship. We see how Africa is developing, what potential for innovation there is, how many young people there are. And we want to build networks, partnerships from which both parties benefit. And you can see that in the large infrastructure projects that China has especially. They make these countries dependent for many, many years. They can then no longer decide for themselves. So we're making a more democratic offer, something that reflects our common values.
And DW Africa editor Daniel Peltz has more on this. Daniel, to start us off, can you tell us how you expect Germany's new Africa strategy to differ from the previous one?
The previous strategy was largely about promoting German private investment in Africa, helping German companies to set up a presence there or extending its presence. And we see a turn now to a strategy that is more classical, it's more development-oriented than the old strategy of 2017.
And so how do they expect this approach to benefit Germany's partners in Africa?
Well, Africa's population is growing rapidly. By 2050, about 2.5 billion people are going to live on the continent. So there's, of course, a dire need to create more jobs for the rising numbers of young people that are going to enter the job market every year. And then also supporting African countries in the green transformation of their economies is very important since we're living in the age of climate change, and many African countries are really feeling the effects of climate change and are going to feel them even more in the next years.
And you said this is a move to a more traditional development agenda. How much do you think the strategy is about expanding German influence in relation to that of Russia or China on the African continent?
Germany's government has made it very clear that it wants to extend Germany's influence and its presence in Africa, but it's going to be very difficult, even with the new strategy, because China has a lot larger footprint on the continent. Turkey, in some areas, has a bigger footprint than Germany has, and turning all of these words into action is going to be a very, very tall order.
Exactly. How do we expect them to turn these words into action, specifically regarding their plans to make the agricultural sector less dependent on foreign-sourced seed, fertilizer, and pesticides? Have they outlined a clear plan on how to move forward with that?
Well, the clear plans are going to be outlined in the next years, of course. It depends a lot on the details, but it's clear that a lot of money is going to be needed, and many of the plans that are outlined in this strategy will take years until they are implemented. So there is a lot of work that is remaining for the German Development Ministry, for the development organizations, and of course also for African governments.
Well, thank you so much for that. That is Daniel Peltz for us. Really appreciate it.